Father Barnabas Powell is pastor of Saints Raphael, Nicholas, and Irene, Greek Orthodox Church of Cumming, Georgia, USA. Here's Father Barnabas with Sunday's homily.
We have a little holiday coming up this week. And you know the question that I ask every year? Father, do we have to fast on Thanksgiving? No. But just one day. Kiss the leftovers goodbye. No, I'm just teasing. But do be disciplined. The last several weeks we've been talking with you about the power of attentiveness and the debilitating reality that when I am not paying attention, when I'm not paying attention to my life lives me instead of me living life. When I'm not being attentive to the most important things in my life gets unruly and gets gripped by chaos. And then I wonder, how in the world did I get here? How in the world did my life turn out the way it did? A lack of attentiveness, dear ones, is the source of most of our challenges in our everyday life. It is when I am attentive, it is when I am awake and paying attention to what is most important, that I am most who I really am. When I am inattentive to who I really am and who God is, that's when I am most unlike myself. I am most like an animal rather than a man created in the image of God. Because the animals are led around by their instincts. The animals are led around by their desires. Animals are led around by what they want. I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. I'm thirsty, I'm going to drink. Animals are led by what they want. Humans, created in the image of God, were given specific instructions on how to tame their desires, to make sure their desires are always their servants and never their masters. But brothers and sisters, you will never live an attentive life if you don't pay attention to three aspects of your life. You will never live, gang, trust me on this. If you get this, you're so far ahead of the game, you're going to leave everybody else in the dust. So it is to your benefit today to wake up and pay attention. It is for your benefit, for your children's benefit, for your grandchildren's benefit, for your society's benefit, for your family's benefit, for you to wake up and pay attention. The three aspects of our lives that we must be attentive to if we're ever going to be who God really made us to be is found in our epistle lesson today in Ephesians, where the Apostle Paul is very clearly telling the Ephesians, guys, you've got to be awake to three aspects of your life if you're ever going to live in the grace of God. We talk about grace a lot. I'm not quite sure we know what it means. I love the little anagram that I learned years ago. You know what grace is, don't you? Grace is God's riches at Christ's expense. God's riches at Christ's expense. God lavishes His creation, you and your life, with grace every day. The very fact that you're breathing in and out this morning is a gift. Oh, you don't understand, Father, I've been eating well and I've been jogging. Ever seen anybody jog? Those people are not happy people. Look at them. They're not happy. They're not happy. I mean, seriously, all kidding aside, look at them. Go to the gym. Go to any gym. You know, people are not giggling, hysterically. No, they're all upset. They're angry. They're not happy people. Do you blame them? I don't blame them. I try it. It's not fun. I got to do it, though. But you didn't earn that last heart breath. You didn't earn that last lung full of air. You didn't earn it. This is God's grace to you. God's mercy to you has granted you this extra day, this new 24 hours that's never been touched. But you're never going to be attentive to that, folks. In fact, let me tell you something else. Let me give you another aspect of a human being that lacks the ability to be awake to God's grace. A person who is not awake to God's grace is never grateful. A person who is not awake to the daily, let's be honest, the moment by moment grace of God. I love the hymn that the Apostle Paul quotes in the book of Acts about Zeus. Believe it or not, it's in there. In Him we live and move and have our being. If you are asleep to the grace of God in your life every day, you live an ungrateful life. You live a life that is patently, markedly, clearly, visibly ungrateful. You never seem to have time for God. You never seem to have time to pray. You have time for everything else. You never seem to prioritize your relationship with God high enough to disturb your comfort. And brothers and sisters, this morning, if you're ever going to wake up to God's grace, if you're ever going to live an attentive life, you're going to have to be awake to three aspects of your daily life. First, the first aspect is where you're from. You must be awake to where you're from. Before Jesus Christ, we were dead in our trespasses and sins. We were slaves. We had no choice. We were slaves to the fear of death. We were slaves to the fear of our mortality. In fact, I will say this today, that most of us are driven, when we're driven by fear, when we're driven to so-called succeed, whatever that means, most of that drive is set on fire by the fear of mortality. I'm going to die. And you were made to be set free from that fear. You were gripped by the sin of your life. You were enslaved to your passions, but not anymore. Now you can be free. You don't have to be a slave to your passions. So if you remain a slave to your passions, look at me in the face. If you remain a slave to your passions, know beyond any shadow of a doubt, it is because that's what you desire. Because you don't have to be a slave to your passions anymore. You don't have to be driven. You can actually live life awake and attentive to the grace of God, living a grateful daily life that makes you who you were really created to be. I love what an old preacher one time told me. He said, "A man who is ungrateful is always unholy." A man who is ungrateful is always unholy. And you can mark an ungrateful life, folks. An ungrateful life is asleep to what has been given to them. An ungrateful life is asleep to the heritage, the past that they've been given. The images and icons of faith in our family that have come before us. We're asleep to that, so therefore we're ungrateful for it. This week we have Thanksgiving, and I'm convinced we will not be grateful for what God has given us if we don't wake up to where we're from. The second aspect of your life that you must be attentive to, if you're ever going to be truly awake and not live your life in a breathing coma, you're going to have to be awake to where you are. The Apostle Paul told the Ephesians, you've been saved by grace through faith. Now you are created for good works. That's what you were created for. You were created to live your daily life, living out what you really do believe in your everyday life. You're to live your life doing those things that remind people of God. You're to live your life every day, doing your everyday life, reminding people of Jesus Christ. That's where you are today. Because of the grace of God, you have been empowered by God's grace, by the sacraments of the church, by the rhythm of life of the church, the feast days and the fasting days, the disciplined life that the church gives you freely. You can embrace it or reject it. It's entirely up to you. But if you embrace it, then know that where you are today is to be a man or a woman that reminds people of Jesus Christ. Why do you think we have confession? Because, folks, all of us stumble at that, don't we? I know I do. Richard doesn't. No, that's not true. The reality is, we all stumble at that. So the church even gives us remedy there to come to confession and to be made whole again, to receive the spiritual medicine of the church, to be set back right on the right path again. Over and over again, the grace of God lavishly, abundantly poured out on you and on your life every day is meant to set on fire inside of you the desire to so be grateful to God that your life reflects it in your choices, in your priorities, in how you spend your money, and what you spend your time on. How you live your life is an act of thanksgiving for a God who's granted you your life. If you're ever going to be awake, folks, if you're ever going to truly be awake and not just one of the members of the herd rushing over the cliff of nihilism and meaninglessness, if you're not going to be gripped by that slavery, if you're ever going to be gripped from the dead-end living of grab for all the toys you can because he who dies with the most toys wins, if you're ever going to be set free from that lie, you're going to have to know where you are. Not just where you've been, but where you are. And the final aspect, if you're going to live a life attentively, if you're going to live life on purpose, if you're going to live life as God created you to live it, you're going to have to know where you're going. You're going to have to know where you're going, folks. If all you're doing is living your life just in a frenzied attempt to get as much stuff as you can before you draw your last breath, you will never be at peace. Your life will always be motivated by fear or anger, or it'll be motivated by a frenzied desire. Never peaceful, never at rest, never contented. Always wondering, I need to do more, I've got to have more, I've got to go more places. And the lack of peace makes you a slave to your desires. You're no more than an animal, being run by its instincts. But if you're going to be free, like Jesus Christ has made you free, like the faith of the apostles, the Orthodox Christian faith for 20 centuries has created free men and women because of the rhythm of life, the disciplined life that teaches them not just where they were, not just where they are, but where they're going. You were made to be the companion of the eternal God. You are never going to die. What do you mean, Father? You just have been telling us about the fear of death. Oh, your body's going to stop, but that's just a temporary situation. The Orthodox Christian faith teaches there's going to be a resurrection from the dead. Everybody's going to be raised from the dead. I don't believe that, Father. Okay. Roll the dice, baby. If I'm right and you're wrong, oh goodness. But if you're right and I'm wrong, I got to dress pretty every Sunday. No skin off my nose. The resurrection of Jesus Christ has guaranteed that all humans are going to live forever. You were made to be God's companion. You were made to so form your life today in this life that you are ready to step into that life. To foolishly waste the moments here, inattentive to the fact that you're going to be there, is the height, watch this folks, of just being foolish. You're making bad choices. Stop it. My precious daughter, 13 years old, God bless her, every time she gets out of the car going to school, the last thing she hears out of my mouth, make good choices, baby. And now most of the time I get the eye roll. You ever see teenage eye roll? But now and again, I think it gets through. And I'm always, yeah, okay, good. I'll do it. That's fine. The reality is, brothers and sisters, if you're not awake to where you were, you needed God's grace. You were dead in your trespasses and sins. If you're not awake to where you are, you were created to so live your life that you remind people of Jesus Christ. And you must stay awake. If you're not awake to where you're going, you are never going to live an awake life. You will pass through this life in the coma, the stupor of your own delusion. And you weren't made for that, children. My angels, you were made for life. You were made to be awake. You were made to experience and be grateful for the grace of God every day of your life. That's what you were made for. Please, I beg of you, especially in light of the embarrassment of riches that God has lavished on you and your life. Especially in light of the embarrassing amount of grace that God has just unloaded on His world, on your life and on my life. In light of God's untold and unmeasured love for us, how will you respond to someone that generous to you? How will you live? What will you do? As we approach Thanksgiving, I beg you, wake up. Amen.
You can follow Father Barnabas on YouTube or on our church website at stsrni.org. Thank you for watching.